So welcome to part two of Tweet Street Occupied Scotland, home of the satirical saltires, the parent forum Not To My Child. Joining us now, we've got Eileen Spence. All right, Eileen, how's it going?
How you doing, Peter? Hi, everybody.
Hi, it's good to see you. I know that you've been a wee bit busier the past couple of days with family issues and what have you. Firstly, how is, because one of your kids had coronavirus, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Or is it-
well, 3 of my grandchildren had coronavirus and their parents.
And the
Right,
parents?
so it was my brand new baby,
Aye.
4 weeks old. Dad got coronavirus, mum got coronavirus, baby got coronavirus, and one of my other children, mum got it, 2 children got it. The wee 8-year-old, he caught it at school from his teacher
All right.
and brought it home to his mum, who was on maternity leave, right, and his 6-month-old brother. And the kids were really poorly. So for anybody says that this Omicron is, just like having a cold and things like that, no, it's not.
No.
It really isn't. It can be extremely, extremely serious, and we still.
Wow. Hopefully, as I say, hopefully it's a full recovery and there's no too
Yeah.
much lasting.
I'm just, I'm saying
symptoms.
that, okay, it's happened, right, and they are going to get better and all that, but just to say to people, be a bit vigilant out there, and you might be all right with it, but there might be somebody else that isn't, so still keep to things like wearing your mask. It just seems sensible for me at the moment.
Well, on that note, we'll move on to the Not To My Child information. Firstly, I want you to listen to a recording that we've done. One of our background team, as you know, Lustra. We'll just name Lustra.
I'm speaking on behalf of this critic. Her voice is really powerful. She speaks on behalf of her vulnerable daughter, who has a right to same-sex care. She writes, "Life changed significantly when my daughter was born. It's a girl, but I was told I might experience grief, and I did. Being told my child had a significant disability that would affect her learning, that was the most difficult thing that I have ever had to hear. Mourning for the baby I had expected to have was compounded by the fear and the worry that set in quickly for the baby that I was holding in my arms. I now had responsibilities that extended beyond my own lifetime. Knowing that your child will grow up to be an adult who's vulnerable is a terrifying prospect. It means entrusting society with that which is most precious to you. Even as I write that sentence, I feel the weight of fear creeping into my stomach once more. Early on, what did to some extent allay those fears for my daughter's future was believing that we lived in a country that for the most part was compassionate and had the NHS as well as social work services. We were lucky in that respect, I reassured myself. At no point, while I was coming to terms with how my daughter's future was set to unfold, did I expect to find myself in a position where I'd be forced to remind my elected representatives about something as basic as my vulnerable daughter's need for same-sex care. Anxieties about her having to endure acts of negligence or maybe even cruelty at the hands of an unprofessional person once I am gone have haunted some of my sleepless nights. However, I've been consoled with the knowledge that regulations and safeguarding policies would be in place to offer her protection from bad actors. But what happens when somewhere along the line, the differences between the sexes become artificially blurred and the safeguarding that was in place can no longer be relied upon because of proposed reforms to current law? What happens when the result of this blurring means a man can say he's a woman, and suddenly your daughter's boundaries cannot be as fixed, her dignity as intact, and her privacy as guaranteed, what do you do then? Maybe you write to your MSP to express your disbelief at your government's broadening of the definition of the word woman to include men. You think, once you've reminded them your daughter deserves the right now and in the future to receive intimate care from a same-sex practitioner, that your elected representative could not possibly disagree. Maybe you attempt to discuss the issue on social media with other elected representatives, because it's just not possible that under these circumstances, they would be anything other than understanding. However, you're not expecting what does happen. The gaslighting that follows, a mumbo jumbo of words that suggest your daughter's physical reality is usurped by the mere thoughts in a grown man's head. You do not expect to be told by those in authority that the impossible is now possible, black is white, lies are truth, and men can be women. He thinks it, therefore she is. So now you know your politicians are seriously suggesting someone with a penis can self-ID as a woman without any medical gatekeeping. What then? You're grateful for the courageous women and the fabulous women's organisations who have fought this battle before you, and you try to play your part in some small way by spreading the word about this conflict of rights. You fight back with ribbons, buying yards of the stuff in purple, green and white, the colour of the suffragettes used for over 100 years, and tie them to lampposts and trees and railings. You post pictures on social media with the hashtag Women Won't Wheesht, hoping to reach the women who are still in the dark, because you know when they find out what self-ID really means, they too will be outraged. They too will find it unacceptable that their daughter's boundaries are being eroded. You also find there are lots of other women, slate women, sticker women, all finding ways to spread the word that women's sex-based rights are in jeopardy. And it gives you hope, and you keep going. Life changed significantly when my beautiful, industrious, caring daughter was born. She's a girl, she'll be a woman. She will be a woman who requires same-sex care, no buts.
What's your thoughts on that?
Very powerful.
Isn't it?
Very powerful, and she's absolutely correct. When did we give politicians the ability and permission to take away the rights to personal care and other things of the most vulnerable people in our society?
Mm-hmm.
We never said it was all right to do that.
No,
it's absolutely not, right? And they never asked us, because I think if they knew, if they had asked us, we would all have said resoundingly, no, you're not on, you're not doing this.
I think that's obviously where we're at now. I mean, with this implementation, the Gender Recognition Reform Bill and the gender self-ID, it's very dangerous. I mean, we had Alan Petrie on when we done last month's Not With My Child.
Yeah.
And again, similar expressions of dismay. And I was saying to Lucy when she was on earlier that as a parent, it's worrying enough that your kid's going to be all right, it's going to grow up well, it's going to be like whatever it may be for happiness and being a good parent to them. When you've got a child who's not able-bodied or disabled, who relies on other services, it's maybe something that we can't encounter until we hear somebody else's words, and it blows my mind. I said this to Lucy when we were on earlier, how you've got all of these things going through the court. The electorate are responsible for taking the government to court in whatever form it's going to be to try and prevent them from doing things that we didn't elect them to do.
Yes.
And it leaves a deep distrust in the government, and not just the government, but some of the organisations and lobby groups that they're using and think tanks that they're using to come up with these suggestions for what they regard as betterment, when all it is creating a deeper mental health issue than was already there.
And causing discord amongst people in Scotland.
Aye, amongst
Right.
everybody else. Aye.
Right. I mean, the young ones, God love them, it's not their fault, right? But at school and leading into university, they have been subjected to 15 years, over the past 15 years, since some of the lobby groups got into the schools, kids have been drip fed proselytism, indoctrination, right? Social justice warrior, and they have been convinced that this is they're being a social justice warrior when they stand up for certain things. They haven't taught critical thinking. Kids aren't told to think, well, evaluate it. There's the evidence on that side. There's the evidence on the other side. What do you think about it? And instead, as I said, they've had this drip feeding of social justice warrior nonsense, right? And we've got to this stage where there is a split. There is a split in people in Scotland about this. And parents, no matter what young people think, right, you know, as a mother, I have carried my babies under my breast. I have given birth to them. I have fed them, and I know them inside out. I know what's best for my children. And I'm not going to have a teacher or a politician, right, or a civil servant or a lobbyist come along and say to me, no, you don't know what's best. You don't know what you're doing. We know better. We'll decide, right? And just to make sure that you go along with it, we're going to make new rules and new laws to make sure that your horns are getting drawn back and you can't say anything about this. Who do people think they are?
It's for me. I'm noticing it's like the school of TikTok. Like it's all these TikTokers, and they come on and they say their things, liberals of TikTok and what have you. No, it's a young person's app for any of their older viewers who don't know what TikTok is. More mature viewers, sorry, not older, more mature.
I'll take older.
Again, it's the minefield of trying to make sure that everything that you say is word perfect before somebody else jumps on top of it when you're just trying to have an honest conversation, which, again, honest conversations sometimes come up with knowledge gaps where you're there thinking something and, well, it's an honest conversation, right? Well, tell me where I've went wrong. Without it being the case, it's gone PC mad.
Easter, I had the most interesting conversation on Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. I was driving to Glasgow and I spoke to a wonderful young woman in Scotland. And she has been so upset by what has happened that she's actually removed all her children from school. And she's now homeschooling. And she's just a working class mum. Right? And she's telling me, right, that her 16-year-old son was getting bullied at school for being straight.
Right.
That what he had reported to her was that practically everybody in his class, boys and girls, were either saying that they were trans, they were gay, they were lesbian, they were bisexual, right? And if they weren't that, they were demi, they were pansexual, and he was the only one in his class who was saying that he was straight. Now, nobody is going to turn around and tell me that this isn't social contagion. Nobody, right? Because that was a class of about 24, pupils, in that particular class kind of thing. Now, in the wider population, the percentages, this doesn't add up. It does not add up.
Again, it's like I've said before, and like we've said on previous Not With My Childs, it's an ideology, it's indoctrination, call it whatever you want, but that's what it is. That's the true fact, and the safeguarding red flags have been going up all over the place. Right, let's talk about because you'd mentioned something that this has been ongoing under a different guise or a different ruse for a good number of years, Eileen.
At least 20, Peter.
At least 20.
Now,
I mean, it's like a Trojan horse. Now, the Trojan horse,
Yes.
just remember that. We'll come back to Trojan horse later on. But Eileen, tell us in your words, like, what you noticed, at least
Right.
20 years ago, that's been persistent and been coming through in a different guise. Just on you go.
Well, I'm going to start with the story of the Age of Legal Capacity Act 1991, right? And how there's really nothing new under the sun. There really isn't, right? Now, what the Age of Legal Capacity Act was about was in 1986, there was a woman called Victoria Gillick taking the government to courts because she didn't want her girls who were under the age of 16 to be prescribed contraceptives without her knowing it or knowing about it. And it wasn't just about morality or religion or anything else about that. It was about the safety of using adult medicines, right, in teenage girls who were underage, whether this was going to be appropriate. And first of all, she won her argument with the government, right? And then it was appealed. But see, for the year that she won her argument, teenage and parents would have to be told if a girl under 16 wanted to access the pill or anything else like that. Teenage pregnancies went down, right? And then the government come back, appealed and won their argument, right? And girls were able to access contraception and things like that under the age of 16 without parental consent. And all of a sudden, teenage pregnancies went up. Right. So what we had in Scotland had to have a similar act, and we ended up with the Age of Legal Capacity Act. And I had a good look at it. Right, and I was actually finding it quite worrying, because children were being given the rights to make legal contracts, amongst other things. But the thing that was most disturbing was that they were allowed to consent to their own medical treatment as long as, in the opinion of a medical practitioner present, that they understood it. Now, it never said or never explained how the medical practitioner was going to ascertain whether the child understood or whether they didn't, right? It just said, it was in the opinion, of that. So anything could happen. And what it was the right to contracept children, right, under the age of 16. And I just raised huge safeguarding red flags for me, right? Because how could you tell, if a girl was 13 or 14 and was being contraceptive because, whoever had said it was right to do it, how did you know that she was actually having sex with a 13 or a 14-year-old boy? Yeah. It could have been a 21-year-old, it could have been a 25-year-old, it could have been a 50-year-old, right? And there was no safeguarding involved here. And as we kind of went deeper and deeper, into it, what was happening was there was stuff going on at the Scottish Parliament. And they had decided that what they were going to do was make sure that everybody in the whole country was having a happy sex life. But they were, in particular, were going to create these policies for children and under 16s. And two of the things they wanted to do was they wanted to challenge teenage pregnancies. And that was their words. They were going to challenge teenage pregnancies. And they also wanted to bring down sexually transmitted infections, particularly chlamydia, which can cause infertility. And one of the ways, that they did that was through an organisation called Healthy Respect, had been given £1.2 or £1.4 million by Scottish Government to do 3 pilot schemes in Lothian. Right. And at the end of the pilot schemes, I was at a meeting in the Royal College of Surgeons, and it was attended by Malcolm Chisholm, who was the health minister at the time. And he was talking about, the success of Healthy Respect and how they were going to roll it out throughout Scotland after the 3 pilot schemes. And I stood up and I said to him, "Excuse me, Minister, I don't know why you think it's a success." I said, because after the pilot schemes, not only had they not brought down teenage pregnancies in those areas or sexually transmitted infections, what they had in effect done by the figures that you released was increased them by 9% and 10%. in the areas where you said you were going to bring it all down.
Bring it done. Right, so it's increased by 9 and 10%, those figures then?
Yes, yes, and they were pretty poor anyway,
Aye.
right? So there was this committee set up, you know, at Scottish Parliament, and it was, the head of it was a public health officer, right? Also a doctor, specialist in public health through Edinburgh, and the usual suspects were invited along, of course. You had your lobbyists, you had Stonewall, you had LGBT youth, you know, you had all the rest of them, right? And then I thought, you know, I looked at it in some of the minutes, I thought there's something not right there. The thing that wasn't right was a company called Sharing had a seat at the table. And so did Durex. Right. Now, when you're saying that you want to, you know, have this policy for children so that they'll be healthy and they'll be happy and have good sex lives and areas like that, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, children, why would they have Sharing? And then you find out that Sharing is the pharmaceutical company, and they make the morning after pill, which is emergency contraception, right? And that Durex had made these condoms for the Far East market, and they were a little bit smaller than usual, and they hadn't proved popular. And what they decided to do was, or what they wanted to do was dump them in Scotland, right, on the Scottish National Health Service, who would buy them from them, and then they hoped that they were going to be distributed in schools by somebody called a health development officer, right? This was a new post that was set up, and half their wages would be paid by the local education authority, and the other half would be paid by the local health board. And what that actually did was made it impossible to prosecute them if something went wrong with one of the kids because of advice that they had given out, right? Or because that they had taken a girl, you know, out of school along to a family planning clinic or whatever, and had the morning after pill given to her, right? Or had Depo-Provera, you know, the injection, because what they were promoting as well was these long-term solutions, as they said, to teenage pregnancy. Depo-Provera is a JAG that lasts for 3 months. They hadn't looked at the fact that it had never been tested in anybody under the age of 27, never mind anybody under the age of 16. The testing in the UK was all done at a hospital attached to the University of Manchester on 27 women. That's all there were. And all of the women were black, none were white. And then you found out that the reason for that was they were taking people out of the trials that might potentially skew the results, right, and make it look like not the best idea in the world. And that's because it was estimated that 7% of white people, Caucasians in this country, could carry genetically 2 diseases, one at a time, right? One of them being factor V Leiden disease and the other one being Hughes disease. And these are blood clotting disorders.
Right.
And if a woman, you know, has got them or got any of those, like that kind of thing, she might find it difficult sustaining a pregnancy. She can get pregnant, okay, but what happens is that blood clots form in the placenta, and she ends up miscarrying her baby, maybe about 10 weeks into the pregnancy. Once that's happened 2 or 3 times, you know, investigations would be done. They'd find out this is what the problem is. And quite a lot of women go on to be able to have a child because they're under supervision and they get blood thinners, right? And, you know, your average 13 or 14-year-old girl isn't going to know that. She's not going to know if she's got Hughes or if she's got factor V Leiden, right? And your average mum, you know, that has had it, isn't necessarily going to be thinking that her 13-year-old child's going to be sexually active. So that's, you know, a conversation she would be keeping for when a girl's a bit older and got a serious boyfriend, and, you know, thinking if you want to have a baby, this is what you need to look at, you know, make it. Yeah. And then we looked even further, right, and we found about the long-term contraceptives. And there's one called Depo-Provera, it's injection, lasts for 12 weeks. So it'll be like 4 JAGs a year. What it was saying from the Food and Drug Administration in America, they had issued a black box warning. What a black box warning means is, well, okay, we're giving it a license, but only under certain circumstances, right? And those where that it shouldn't be used, it should be used for the shortest possible time, right? It should not be given to teenagers because it causes osteoporosis, osteopenia, migraines, and in a lot of times there's a weight gain averaging of about 3 stones. What they had discovered a legitimate use for it, and that was if a woman or a girl didn't have the vaccination or had no immunity to German measles. So what they would do, and that's very, very dangerous for babies in the womb in early pregnancy, right? And they were still vaccinating, you know, girls for rubella, you know, like kind of at that time. But anyway, so if they got the rubella jag, they would get the Depo-Provera jag, and that meant they wouldn't get pregnant, you know, for 12 weeks after having had that jag. And that's a legitimate, you know, kind of use for it. However, it's still really, really worried us that these adult drugs that had only ever been tested on adults, right, were going to be given to teenage girls, you know, under the age of 16 when they'd never been tested on them, right?
Understandably. When are we talking about this? Is this still as far back as?
It was 2002.
2002, right?
Right. Sharing, as I say, they had the morning after pill to sell. And the morning after pill was about £35 a dose, and they wanted to sell about 100,000 doses. Right. In Scotland, right, because they'd saturated the adult market, and there was no morality in it for them, right? They were just looking at, okay, you've got a problem, you want to cut down on teenage pregnancies and things like that. We have a product here, right? You can give it out to your children, right, and underage children. And the thing about the morning after pill is they're still actually not quite certain how it actually works. Right, because when a woman gets pregnant, that egg or that ova is fertilized inside the fallopian tube, right? And it then takes between, you know, can be 3, 5, 7 days to come down into the womb and implant in the womb and grow into a baby. So what the morning after pill does is it paralyzes the cilia. These are like wee small tiny hairs that are in the fallopian tube. They would waft, you know, the fertilized egg along. And what they were finding was there was an increase in ectopic pregnancies, particularly in teenagers, because they didn't know how to spot what the danger signs were. There was that aspect of it. Let me just get back to my notes here. Now, at that time, Scottish government's own figures indicated that less than 30% of teenagers under the age of 16 might be sexually active, right? So if you look at the converse of that, 70% of them weren't. 70% of kids under the age of 16 were not sexually active. Right. So why would you be embarking on a programme where you're going to flood them with morning after pill, condoms, Depo-Provera, Implanon, which is an implant, you know, under the skin. And it wasn't even all areas of Scotland. They were particularly targeting what was called at the time areas of multiple deprivation.
Right, okay.
So it would have been, for example, I can talk about Glasgow, it would have been Castlemilk, Drumchapel, right? Blackhill, Easterhouse, right? Govan, right? All areas where there was, you know, multiple deprivation and multiple problems. And that just used to make me really quite cross. Right? It was as if they were suggesting that working class parents had no morals, didn't know how to raise their children, didn't know how to advise them, right? And these people were going to take over the role of parents and, you know, tell teenagers at school what their rights were, what they were entitled to, and offer them all sorts of goodies, right, from school. This, that was impling on. Why? Right. One of the other things about you know, the hormonal methods and things like the morning after pill. At the same time, there had been a study being done amongst 5 countries on hormone replacement therapy.
Right.
Now, exactly the same hormones was in the hormone replacement therapy as was in the morning after pill. Right? The study was meant to go for 5 years, and I had to stop it after 2.5 years because the dose of hormone in the HRT was actually giving adult women cancers. It was exacerbating cancers of the breast, the ovaries, the womb, that kind of thing. Now, say that was 1 unit, right, that was in the HRT, and that was doing that to adult women. It was 200 units that was in the morning after pill. And they wanted to give that to teenage girls. Now, Sharing themselves, who manufactured it, they said that their product was for emergency contraception, right? And it should only be used maybe once or twice in a woman's whole fertile life. That would be from like age 15, perhaps to 45. You should use it once or twice. And they were proposing just to hand that out in schools. In fact, they had been until they were stopped. And it was in Aberdeen where one teenager had asked for it 4 times in 5 cycles and got it.
Right, so just so that I'm computing this right, 4 times in 5 cycles. So within the space
4 times in 5 months.
Like within the space of 5 months, an underage child has asked
for
the morning after pill 4 times.
Unprotected sex.
Wow.
Yes. Now, so what we did back then was we gathered all the information together and we put it to Jack McConnell,
Okay.
who was the First Minister at the time.
I remember him.
And I've got to say, I've got to say it was an awful lot more reasonable about what we were saying than the government just now is. And he actually said there will be no morning after pill in schools. It will not be getting given out. Right? And we thought at the time, well, that's a quite significant, victory. He's obviously looking to the health and the future fertility of young people in Scotland, like kind of good on him. I never thought for a minute here we would be 20 years on, Peter, right? And they're back, right? And the pharmaceutical companies are back, right? And the medical people are back, right? And added to it, they've now got an ideology, which is a cult. And you remember that thing we were all talking about? I think it was last year that found it, and it was from America. I think it was hedge funders, right?
That's right.
And they're saying, boasting, in fact, right, about how the helpful education policies in the UK meant that there would be an extra 500,000 trans children by the year 2026. And it was like the hedge funders saying, get in here early, guys, invest in this, and you're going to get a return of 25% on what you invest. No morality in it for them. This is money.
It's just pound signs or dollar signs, as the case would be in this, that they see, and they don't see your child, my child, somebody else's child, grandchild, or whatever. It's just meat. It's just, all they see is money, and it's just meat. They've got no feeling, as you say, no morality towards it.
Yeah.
So
also there's the aspect that in Scotland anyway, right, private schools do not have to teach any of this. Right? They don't have to teach about trans ideology or anything about it whatsoever. Now, that will be the helpful education policies that these hedge funders are talking about in that. Now,
Yeah.
but Rhiannon Spears Group Thai, right, boasted, right, about how her and her colleagues had managed to embed these materials within the curriculum for excellence.
Just so that
Right,
just so that, because there's a lot of names getting mentioned, but Rhiannon Spears, that's the one that didn't pay her council tax, is that right? Is that the
yes,
one
I think that's right.
The massive council tax bill, right? Aye, that's right. Cool.
It's also the one that took the prostitute into the city chambers, you know, for shock effect, saying it was sex workers as work, and saying that girls
Aye,
should maybe consider it as
Aye,
a
that's the
career.
one. That's the one that didn't pay her council tax. Definitely, I remember now. Yep.
And she was also convener of the education committee, and it was so easy for her to get all this stuff into schools in Glasgow, but not only Glasgow, it's now in schools all over Scotland because it was embedded in the curriculum for excellence.
Aye,
and I have yet to meet one parent who was consulted on that, whether they thought that was going to be a good idea. I've yet to meet them, and I haven't.
Probably Rosa Zambanini and people like that would be consulted on it. See all the people that
I think that Rosa, I think that her experience is confined to her own child. She's entitled to make decisions regarding her own underage child. She's not entitled to take decisions or, you know, the input for any other people's children. That's her job.
I mean, if you, because like for anybody whose child is going through
gender dysphoria,
gender dysphoria, for any families who are actually in the grip of this, I really feel for them, especially because it's been pushed so vehemently by the government of the day in Scotland, and I never thought I would see this. I mean, something completely different that's happening just, and I've been following, was obviously I've been following it for a wee while, was the jailing of Craig Murray. And you've got all these things that Scotland has become a place.
I don't recognise it anymore.
It's your worst nightmare when you think of the Scotland that we had and we could have had. To see what, I know that there's things going all over the world now, and my thoughts are with all the innocent people that are suffering in Ukraine, for the Russian invasion. And again, you're getting fed information about one side's getting this and the other side's saying that, you know, the he says, she said part of it. But coming back to this, I mean, obviously the concerns, our main concerns, are fixing our situation for our kids, or maintaining our situation as it was for our kids without all of this before then, because this is going on in Canada, this is going on in Australia, it's going on in the States.
That's why we know this is not just confined to Scotland. This is a worldwide thing, and that's why, you know, there's serious money behind it.
I know what's happening in Ireland as well. So I seem to always forget about Ireland, which I don't know why.
You know, we've got a backroom team there, right? And if we can actually get it out that the hedge funders, right, that put their money, they've got so much money, they put it in the Cayman Isles or they put it somewhere else and all that, and they're going, yay, right, throughout the whole of the UK, right, the education policies, right, in schools have been so helpful that we're going to have an extra 500,000, that's 500,000 trans children, and they're rubbing their hands with glee. Invest your money with us and you'll get a 25% return on it. Most people don't get a 25%. It's like a Ponzi scheme. A 25% return.
That's it, and that's how I passed it off. Like, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid scheme. It's all of these names that they've been known as, where it goes top down. Everybody at the top gets the reward, and everybody at the bottom's left suffering. And in this case, it's our kids.
Peter,
it's kids.
See, if this was just money, Ponzi schemes, and people invest money, stocks go up and down all the time, right? Folk lose money, right? I'm talking about what's going to be left behind in terms of broken human beings.
Yep, absolutely.
Of children who've made the wrong choices, who've said it and have been led along by lobbyists, and possibly teachers, right? and have taken the puberty blockers. By the way, Sweden's just said they're halting that. They're not having puberty blockers.
Well, Lucy and I spoke about this actually last night, and it was good in the fact that, again, we've had professional bodies decrying the GRA and the implementation of like unisex toilets in schools. We've had professional bodies coming out in opposition to the government on this. So to have another country who's actually financed it and done a study, and the results are coming back saying that, well, these are the concerns that we've got, and valid concerns, by the way. See, that's not valid, and no, just this isn't just Tweet Street, because I need to keep on going back to, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the likes of Eileen, the likes of Lucy for Parents Across Scotland, and the background team that have volunteered their time to help us do the research. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for them. So it's all these strong women that I keep on mentioning that have came with this information, researched, professionally researched, and now we've got other countries that have financed this to come back and give the results of the concerns that we're raising.
Right, what they're saying is, we've been doing this before you, right? And we've discovered this isn't working, and that's damaging our young people. That's what they're saying. That is it.
And
Sweden,
that's
what they're saying.
And Sweden is a very liberal country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like how these things can get ignored. We'll talk about. Let's bring up to obviously the Sweden thing was a couple of days ago. We've had the 4 women. No, sorry, not the 4 women Scotland. We've had the 4 women in Scotland going to court for the legal sex and
on board.
On board. So it's a case of sex.
They wanted it was meant to be 50% men and 50% women, but the way that the Scottish government had done it was you could have had 95% men on it and just 1 biological woman.
Yeah.
Right. Because it'd been 50% biological men, 45% trans women who are men, right? And like 5 women.
Aye. I mean, 4 women in Scotland also was. Did they not take something to take the government to court for the legal definition for sex or something? I can't remember the actual terminology it was used, but it was basically a natal-born male or a natal-born female was the actual definition. That was only a couple of days ago. You might not have seen it, Eileen.
Oh, that was that group? Was that not about the census?
No, that was I can't remember their name. I don't know. It's escaped me. It'll come back to me.
Fair play for women.
Fair play for women. Aye, fair play for women.
Right.
Went with the census. 4 women in Scotland went with for the definition of sex, which was passed a couple of days ago. The fair play for women was only yesterday or the day before. It was at court, and they ruled against the appeal that they had made in the inner court.
I would like to ask people here, right, especially women, right. I've got to tell you, I have had an absolutely appalling time trying to source a paper copy, for filling in the census.
Well,
right.
Now that you mentioned that, right, Lucy was saying about trying to, a wee bit earlier, Lucy was saying about trying to get a paper copy of the census, get in touch and send back request a paper copy and send it back. No, you've done that. You've tried to do that. Tell
5
us.
telephone calls it took me, right? Eventually get through to an organisation that gathers the information throughout the whole of North Ayrshire, East Ayrshire, Ayrshire, South Ayrshire. And they said, oh, we're independent, but not, they're a private company, right? They just happen to be paid by the local authorities and by the Electoral Commission. But what they also do is they run up. Now, councils have got this information anyway, because when you pay your council tax, you're registered at an address. But they ask for things like your mobile phone number, your email address, your national insurance number, and you're like, why? Now, I think it's for something else. I think they're data mining.
Aye, data harvesting, selling on, because your data is for anybody who doesn't know, for anybody who's like, I was a technophobe before I started doing this a year ago. I could operate my phone, any phone that I got, I knew how to operate smartphones. When it came to computers and things like that, I didn't know. But what I did know for previous employment and attending seminars where the company that I worked for was trying to get partnerships with other companies, and everything was getting driven online. And the things that kept on cropping up, and the things that kept on being made aware to me for the role that I was facilitating at that time, was that data was so important and it was so valuable. The cost of getting somebody's telephone number, and this is, we're going back 8 years, at least 8 years here. That was the last time I was employed with the company that I'm talking about. So I was a project manager and I was away doing things, and they asked me to attend these seminars, and which I did. Right, again, boring, really boring, but you had to go. It was your job. That was you were paid to do. So they were telling me that to get somebody's mobile telephone number, the value to every company at that time was £20. To get their email address, the value to every company was £20. A date of birth was worth £25, and all of these other pieces of information that they, again.
So here's them taking name, address, mobile phone number, email address, right, your date of birth, and your national insurance number. Mm-hmm. How much money is made out of that?
Yeah, for just one person. So you're probably talking about, if you get, and again, so these tick box exercises you get, and the last questions, oh, get that box ticked. Oh, can you give me this? Can you give me that? And if you're in any way, if you're on a telephone, if you're face to face with somebody, and you've got something else going on in the background, if you get kids in the background, and you're like, oh, right, well, you know what it's like yourself. The minute you went on the phone when you had kids running about, seemed to be the time when the kids used to play up. And you see it on all these television shows when you've got them in the wee room doing the report, and then the next thing the kid breaks in. So you're trying to listen to what's getting said, deal with whatever's happening around about you, and maybe no paying full attention. But again, it's not until you've had your bank account, what do you call that? Cloned or hacked, or whatever it is they do, or until your data has been used in a fraudulent manner by some of these companies that they sell it onto. Because you've all probably had a phone call or an email from Nigeria telling you that you've got a distant relative that's won the lottery and they've left you an inheritance.
If you just deposit £500 in here, right?
Or all these like scams, right? Like, scams. Like, I'm a scheme boy. I'm not a boy anymore, right? So I try not to get caught out with scams.
But I never thought for a minute that Scottish government, right, and Scottish councils would be involved in anything like this. I mean, never, right? So I'll very quickly tell you, 5 telephone calls trying to source a paper copy of it, right? Been told that a letter will go out on the 28th of February. Mm-hmm. Now, you know the way the post is going down here, you might not get that for 3 or 4 days.
Yep.
Right? And that's us into maybe the 4th of March, right? There'll be a number on it, and what you can do is email them to ask for a paper form. Right? And I pointed out, I mean, no, everybody's got the capacity to email. I mean, I live in a town where the population is actually quite elderly, right? They don't use, like data. They don't, look up things in the internet. You see them queuing up at the bank to pay their bills, right? They physically go into the bank, right? I said, and also, I mean, it's a bit arrogant. I said, you're taking it for granted that everybody is computer literate. I said, oh, fine, my children grew up with that. I didn't. And there's a lot of other people, in the same position. And you should not be saying, email this, right, and ask for that and put your number down. Right? So, okay, so say you did that. I think the first thing they would come back to you saying is, if you've got capacity to use email, why are you asking for a paper copy of this? You're quite capable of doing it online. That's number one. Right. Number 2, are they going to have enough forms, or are they going to have enough time to print out census forms for everybody that requests one? Right. Number 3, how are they going to get them posted out, and how long is that going to take? Right. And number 4, is it all going to be able to be done in time for the census to take place on the date? Now, I haven't had answers to this yet. Right?
What do you think they're trying to do with that then? What do you think they're trying to do?
I think they're going to try and skew the figures, to be honest with you. They'd like it all to be online. Right? Because there's quite a few at my house kind of thing, and I'm waiting with great joy to get a paper copy when if you can say something as ridiculous that people are allowed to self-ID
Yeah.
their gender, right, when really they mean sex, then for that bit, I haven't made my mind up whether I'm going to be a cheese sandwich, right, or the regimental goat of the Irish Guards, right, because I could quite easily self-ID as that. I mean, if a man can self-ID and say that he's a woman, well, how can I not be a piece and cheese, right,
Aye.
or a goat, right,
No.
Jedi Knights, right, what else, right, a leg of a chair,
Aye.
right,
Well, I suppose
Ailsa Craig.
I suppose it depends what you feel like on the day receiving that and filling it in.
It does.
Because
It's all about feelings.
it's on a feeling, isn't it? Right.
Aye.
Aye. Now, what about Trojan horse? What do you know about Trojan horse?
What I know about Trojan horse was, I remember this was back around about 2014, and there was an accusation that there was a number of schools in Birmingham, because they had a high concentration of Muslim pupils in them, that the mullahs were trying to take the schools over and teach the children via Sharia law.
Okay.
That was it. Right.
Right. Okay, on you go. Have you got something else?
It was kind of, they proved it was wrong, right? They proved that the thing was wrong, and it was actually, this is just more an opinion, I think there was security forces involved in something like that, because this country, what I do know about the UK is they would rather have us all fighting with each other,
Yes.
right, than coming together, right? They would hate the idea of the parents of, like poor kids, and folk that are disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged, right? They absolutely hate the thought of us all coming together, unionising, right, turning around to them and saying, no,
Yeah,
no,
that's it.
we're doing this for your kids.
Standing up for your rights, because I mean they're trying to stymie them as well by the introduction of the crime and policing bill. You can't protest, you get 51 weeks in jails or 10 years in jail for reoffending. In Scotland, if we bring it to closer to home, they've put an exclusion zone round about Holyrood.
Oh, we're not allowed, and that's what that was designed for.
That's what it was.
That was designed for protest.
That concourse there was for people to go and protest, and it was about, because Holyrood, although it's the Scottish Parliament, it's
ours. We paid for it.
Yeah, it's still under the our UK Parliament, the dumplings down the road.
Oh, listen, I don't know that there's that much dumplinish about them. Right? Do you remember Govey?
Well, I was going to go to Govey, right? He's
Govey with the dancing. Did you see him doing the dancing? And all that?
I did see him doing the dancing in Aberdeen. He was on a night out. He was on a night out. He was out his face. He wasn't drunk. He was out his face. He was playing with marching powder. Right.
Somebody said to me that Colombian marching powder doesn't just rot your brain; it rots your septum and like other parts of the body, kind of thing.
Well, Daniela Westbrook was proof of that. Her septum.
Oh God, that's right, it did.
Aye.
Right, and if I remember correctly, some years ago they'd actually done some testing in every toilets, right, of the Westminster Parliament.
Aye, that's right.
And what they found was cocaine everywhere. That Colombian marching powder was getting used everywhere. In the Westminster Parliament.
They wonder so, causing the stymies that they're causing. Right, so Michael Gove, right? Let's stick with Govey.
Right, did Govey no say something? Now you can correct me if I'm wrong, right? Did Govey no say something about how he was not really that worried what was happening in Scotland because they were all going to be fighting each other?
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's bothered me since I seen it. It was on an interview. I was trying to find it today. It was on an interview. I was sat watching. The interview was unspectacular as it always is, but it was just before it was the timing and just the phrase that he used. You wouldn't need to worry about that because they'll all be fighting with one another at that point, right? No, we were at either 57 or 58% in the polls for yes.
That's right.
He was asked the independence question, right? Now Michael Gove was the Secretary of State for Education in 2014, just before the
Trojan horse.
and the
Trojan horse.
when Trojan Horse
Mhm.
was muted as being a hoax or whatever, right? Now, there was a podcast the other day, and it was basically somebody for the New York Times, and he was trying to come out and correct what the New York Times had said without actually saying anything any different for what was said, and without refuting anything about the New York Times. So my wonder is that we were at 58% in the polls, or 57 or 58% in the polls. I think it was 58, right? Because we were at, that was what got me. We were at our highest percentage for yes before even a campaign, right? And he came away with that statement, and it stuck with me. It really did, and I'm like,
Oh, doesn't
what's he got to?
Why
But
would she be saying
then
what
GRA
would you
started to
think?
getting more
then-
public airing.
penny drops?
Yep, started to get more public airing. It started to get more people getting, what is this GRA? What is this? What this people are talking about? Why is this splitting the independence movement? Right now, I couldn't trust a Tory anywhere ever. Right, if they tell me it was raining outside, I'd go and look at the window. Right, there you go. That's what it is we mean Tories. But him in
Well, that's
particular,
what a good journalist would do.
well, that's it. But him in particular, right, being a born Scot,
Scottish.
right, a born Scot. Well, listen, that's
No, well, I don't know if he's Scottish.
that Scottish tag doesn't come as easily. You know what I mean? They say, but it wouldn't surprise me. Him being the education minister at the time, seeing the stooshy that caused in Birmingham at the time,
Yep.
that made national news.
Yep.
It didn't just make national news; it made world news actually, because it was
International news that
aye,
made.
it was getting reported in all the areas that Sharia law and those things were prominent, and so it caused a bit. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he knows the damage that caused, and the damage that caused in the community in Birmingham at the time, and he's just maybe rejigged it a wee bit and put it in place with, as Campbell Martin
Well-
says, there's people for the MI5 that managed to penetrate the IRA, and they've been in the SNP and in the Scottish government for a long time.
Margot MacDonald wrote to the security services in 2013 and actually asked them not to interfere in Indiref in 2014. Right, and the story was documented in the Herald.
Mhm.
You know that she'd done it. Right, because when she first got voted in as SNP, what happened was two guys said they were journalists, asked her out, to give a lunch and all that, and one was for MI5 and one was for somebody else, CIA. Right, and she was saying, she says, I don't want any interference in this. Right, now Govey, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if his girlie up here has been Leslie Evans, because Leslie Evans, right, and I think she's retired now anyway. Right, but Leslie Evans was the senior civil servant, and what did she do every Wednesday? She reported along with the other, senior civil servants to Westminster about what was happening in Scotland.
So, like, bringing it up to not with my child, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again until proven otherwise. The ruse that's getting played, because I've noticed this, right? I've noticed it's Tory MPs that are
Playing the good guy.
Yeah, right.
It's good cop, bad cop.
That's it, right? So you've got what appears to be a complete flip. That you've got the Scottish government that you thought that you were voting for to get your independence, who's telling you and the First Minister's telling you, lying to you on the television and saying, no, they voted for GRA, which was buried away. If it was in the manifesto at all,
Page 33, page 33. There was 33,000 words in that manifesto.
Right.
And there was one paragraph on page 33. And all it said was they were going to revise GRA, and they never mentioned a word about self-ID. And all of those things have an impact on children's education in school. Yep. All of them.
Right. So again, we come back to, we're doing this, it's for safeguarding this, not with my child. Yep. However, I'm a Scottish independence supporter. I've been all my life, and I'll never change away from that, right? But it wouldn't surprise me. We've seen how things are shifting, and some of those things that stick in your mind when you're watching something and you're picking up, when you're watching the propaganda to see, right, what we're battling against here, because that's the only reason I watch it. It's like, what shite, what rubbish are they talking? so that I can go and check, double check, triple check, and go elsewhere. We don't just take everything that we say as granted.
As I said at the beginning, when you'd asked me to talk, right? There is nothing new under the sun.
No.
They're repeating and repeating and repeating, right?
Yep.
And see those of us that are old enough, right? We're looking back and we're thinking, wait a minute, they did something similar back then, right? And nearly got away with it.
What was the other thing? And all that? Name Person Act or something like that.
Name persons, right? See what they've done with the transgender guidance, the new transgender guidance that should have been replaced in 2019. That was one of Shirley Ann Somerville's job, and she never bothered doing it because she was that busy giving 6 lobbyist groups access to the Equality Unit and the Family Law Unit in the Scottish Parliament during lockdown. Well, we're all locked up in our houses and worried sick, people dropping like flies round about us and no able to go to funerals and weddings and right. And she's merrily given these, these 6 groups access, even though they get paid money by the Scottish Government in the millions, right? She's given them access to free legal advice in the Scottish Parliament.
It's as if all of these.
But see the transgender guidance. I don't know who it was that actually wrote it up. Well, I do know who it was that wrote it up for them. Right, and what they've done is it's like cut and paste from named person. It's as if they've cut and pasted things from named person, lifted it, and put it into the transgender guidance for schools. Wow. Now they're using the word guidance, but what they're doing is they're holding a gun to the head of the local authorities and the teachers, and they're saying, you will do this. Right? And then when they're questioned on it, they'll say, but it's just guidance. I mean, all we did was give guidance. It's up to the head teachers, and it's up to the teaching unions, and it's up to the local authorities. Right? Where have we heard that before?
Again, it's this plausible deniability, isn't it? Oh no, well, we meant this. How you've interpreted it, so nobody's to blame then. Oh well, and it ends up a circle of blame, a blame circle that, oh well, no, we meant that with them. Oh well, they never tell us that, so we pass on to them, and we never tell them that. But and it's all jigsaw. So who's responsible then? There's no responsibility.
Well, as you know, we got a legal opinion on it. Right, and what they're proposing to do with transgender education, guidance for schools is actually illegal. So it looks as if that's going to have to be challenged.
Yeah, well, I've got a funny feeling there's going to be more than one challenge coming the Scottish Government's way. The unfortunate thing is that it's the people who've already paid their taxes that are then going to have to pay more money to take on a government or a lobby group CEO or a think tank CEO, the people that are responsible for these decisions. So it's the working person again that's going to be out of pocket fighting for something that everybody else is in the same situation as you, is agreeing that, well, no, we didn't agree to that, we didn't vote for that, that's not what we asked for. How's it going? Because there's up to 80%, if we give anywhere between 71 and 80% in the polls are against the implementation GRA in the form that the Scottish Government are trying to.
I'm going to give you an interesting statistic here. Now, bearing in mind what it said about the hedge fund guys saying that because of the education policies, right, and helpful education in the UK, they were envisaging there'd be an extra 500,000, right, trans children by the year 2026. This is 4 years away, right? In 2004, with the Gender Recognition Act, came out, and we had gender recognition certificates, GRCs. Between then and 2019, which was a 15-year period. Remember, throughout the UK, we've got 66 million people, right? And in total, there were 4,900 gender recognition certificates issued in that 15-year period, and all to adults, every one of them. Now, Scotland's share, it was, a percentage was about, I think it was like 40 a year Scotland gave out, right? And that was for people with gender dysphoria, who'd gone through the medical routes, who were suffering acutely, you know, because they had this gender dysphoria, and it was decided after they had been examined by doctors and psychiatrists and everything else, they were no danger to anybody. They weren't sexual predators, right? Because that's what that medicalisation of it did, right?
Yeah.
They were checked out, right? And they were issued with a gender recognition certificate, right? And it was a legal fiction. And actually, it was so that two people of the same sex could get married as well, because we didn't have civil partnerships or gay marriage or anything like that at the time. And that was unintended consequences. This was people trying to be kind to a small minority in the country. And now look where we are.
Yeah.
Look where we are right now. And it's not just about being man going to women or women going to men. It's non-binary, it's pansexual, it's demisexual, it's this, it's that. It's social contagion is what it is.
Aye. Well, I mean, here you go. Like, just another safeguarding issue, because this is something that happened in America around the beginning of the week. So it must have happened last week. And it was parents saying that their kids had been away to a retreat.
Oh, I saw that. It was a science club. It was a science camp.
Aye.
Right? And two guys end up sleeping in the girls' cabins.
Yeah, because they were non-binary.
Non-binary.
And the retreat place that was facilitating it had said that they employ or they recruit volunteers of all persuasions, orientations. Right. That's the word I was looking for. Of all orientations, and that's good. But then to have minors,
the mammies
didn't know about it.
Aye,
they didn't
the
know
mammies
about
were going like that. That's all very well, and you can do that if you want, right? But what you should have done was told me as a parent.
To notify beforehand.
I should have been notified, right, that this was going to be the case. And what they said was no harm to anyone, but I wouldn't have let my female child take part.
And that was the common consensus, and I'm quite sure it'd be high in the list of complaints from parents in Scotland.
Yes, Scottish mummies and daddies.
If the same situation had happened here, hold on a minute, nobody told me this, or that wasn't advertised, or what. There might be a few swear words for Scottish people right enough, because we like to use our swear words, know what I mean? Or no, we don't like to. We feel as if we've got a right to use them.
Obliged. Inserts Billy Connolly joke.
Aye. Well, that's it. So you've got these things happening, and you've got these like safeguarding issues, and nobody seems to be doing anything other than, again, it's left to an individual or a small group or us. Aye, that's what I mean.
No, it's not, but when I say us, I mean ordinary parents.
Yes.
Ordinary grandparents, right? And I'm thinking, where are the so-called professionals in this, right? Where are the doctors turning around and going like that? No, that's no biological. That's rubbish, right? Where are the biologists, right?
They're getting paid
where
to look the other way, aren't they?
Right? Where, and I'm telling you, I am absolutely certain that there are MSPs at the Scottish Parliament that don't agree with any of this, but they're just too intimidated to say anything about it. Well,
there was somebody, again, this is slightly away from not with my child here, but there was somebody for the Scottish Government had liked a tweet or retweeted a tweet on Twitter. Obviously, Tweet Street is based off of Twitter, just in case anybody that's joining us doesn't know that.
Was that guy McDonald?
I can't even remember the name.
Mark McDonald, right? He retweeted something, it was misspelled, and it was slightly rude. And they had the trial run on him about destroying his career before they went after Alex Salmond.
Right.
We all know about that.
Aye, well, we all know about that, right? I'm talking about just in the past couple of days, Eileen. There was something, and again, somebody for the Scottish Government had liked or retweeted a tweet, and then had been told for this @Queer Scott, I think it is on Twitter, whose banner is FWS, is for Women Scotland, is a hate group, right? So that says it all. Had come in and monitored the tweet and told the person, like, in no uncertain terms, that you shouldn't be following, liking, or retweeting this. The person then stopped following the person that they were following, made an excuse, said they didn't know they were following them, deleted the tweet that they had, and obviously that takes away
Well,
the
that's
like as
that's
well.
what I mean. It's intimidation.
Aye, it's like you're getting monitored by these people on what you can say and when you can say it. And if you say something that they don't like, it's public. They're addressing it in public. There's no.
in some ways,
So that intimidation is takes over people. I'm not sure what to say here.
Peter, in some ways, I can't wait till this country starts opening up again, right?
Yeah.
And we can actually start having public meetings in schools, or even school, you know, in the grounds of schools and things like that.
Aye.
Or in community halls, right, or church halls, or whatever, right? Because see that other crowd, they haven't got a leg to stand on.
No,
they don't have an argument. They have no evidence. They've got no evidence to back them up. They make up evidence. They lie. They cheat. They scheme. They are slick it, and they act by stealth.
Aye.
And I'm telling you, I am absolutely certain that in Scotland, this has been driven by 50 people from the lobbyist groups, who all sit on each other's committees, who all get together, right, who all create the policy, right, who then go back individually, you know, from their groups to the Scottish Parliament and say, this is what our group says, this is what our group says, this is what our group says, this is what our group says. The Scottish Parliament goes like that. Well, we've got all these groups, you know, diversity, and we have all these groups, and yes, you know, this is what we're going to do. No, you're not going to do it.
It seems to be that there's. I mean, it would be good to get the minutes for some of the meetings.
Tried it, right? Guess what? It's even worse than the stuff that was presented to the Fabiani committee.
Right.
Redacted, 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 and more redacted. And that's just the civil servants' names. And that's the names of the lobbyists. Redacted. Why? Right? Because see if somebody is maybe, I don't know, like Meningitis Association, right? And they're wanting to lobby the Scottish Government. Right? I've not seen their names redacted.
Aye.
Or folk that look after, you know, blind people in Scotland, right? And they want to lobby the Scottish Government, and you go for the minutes and things like that. I don't see their names redacted.
Yeah.
Right? But when it comes to Stonewall, LGBT, Scottish Trans Alliance, Equality Network, and Gender, right? And that's just to name TIE, right? And that's just to name a few, right? Why are their names redacted? Why is this a big secret? Why are we not allowed to read full minutes?
It's mad. I mean, if anybody has those minutes unredacted with all that information, you can drop us an email at tweetstreetscotland13@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to do whatever investigatory work that I can, or the background team can, before making that public. Because
before the 5th of May.
Aye, before the 5th of May. Because at the end of the day,
parents deserve to know.
Parents do deserve to know. And if it means that I'm law or whatever, fuck it. It is what it is. I'm at my fuck it level, you know what I mean? It's a case of, if it wasn't for
there's nothing hateful. There's nothing hateful about our conduct, Peter, or anybody Not With My Child, or any of the group, you know, that we've got in the background, or you know, the Parents Forum. There's nothing hateful about what we are doing, right? All we're trying to do is safeguard children. That's it.
Aye, that's all
we're trying to safeguard children. And last Sunday, newspapers, I don't know about you, but Twitter was on fire with Scottish parents. And that's where, in effect, ipso facto, right, without changing a law to do it, right, Scottish Government have released new guidance. And what they're saying is that your child as young as 13 can be sexually active, and we will never tell you anything about it.
Yep.
Right? And that they tried that back in 2002, right? But what we were able to bring, what they were doing was importing a lot of stuff from America, right? Best practice in America and best practice and all that. But what we were able to prove was that the research coming out from America was showing that if a 13-year-old girl was having sex, she wasn't having it with a 13-year-old boy.
Aye, well, again,
on average, the male concerned was 5 to 8 years older. So you would have a 13-year-old child having sex with a 21-year-old man. And if the First Minister, right, and a Health Minister and a Criminal Justice Minister, right, in the Scottish Parliament think for 1 minute that we as parents and grandparents are going to allow a situation like that to happen, where 13-year-old children, and a teacher knows about it in school that they're sexually active, and does not make the proper investigations, and that involves parents, right? You make sure that this child is safeguarded. Well, do you know what's going to happen? We're going to end up with a situation like Rotherham.
Yeah, with the child grooming gangs. You're going to have, I mean, I let my head run away with me at times. When we seen the survey, the child sex survey, about have you had anal or oral sex, anal or vaginal sex, sorry, or oral sex in the past 12 months, how many times? And I allow my head to run away with me into those, what you're saying, because it's happened. It's happened in Rotherham. It happens in places, and you hear all these harrowing stories where some parents have missed it. They've missed the
warning signs.
The warning signs, right? They've missed these warning signs. Mine's are always on alert. Somebody tried to take me into a car when I was a young boy, and as I say, if it wasn't for three women and a couple of guys after they put their pints down, I don't know what would have happened, right? But so I've always been
vigilant.
More cautious. I'm more cautious about things. And when it came to my kids, it was like try to make them aware that okay, just everybody that smells at you isn't your pal, just the same as everybody that frowns at you isn't your enemy. You know, it's like you need to understand things and try to help them along the way, try to guide them.
This new guidance from last Sunday. Now, when it hit the front page of newspapers and things like that, I looked at it and I thought, oh dear God, they're back again. Right. And what they are in effect doing is lowering the age of consent to 13 without changing the law. That's what they're doing.
But
right.
If we go further, Eileen, they've then got to look at, for me, they've then got to look at like withdrawing the age of consent. That's what I see it heading. That's what I see it heading.
Listen,
it's a case of
we've both watched it on Twitter. We've both watched it on Twitter, and it's parents and grandparents coming along and going like that. We believe that the Scottish Government is actually trying to introduce paedophilia, or make it, paedophiles have rights too, right? And it's just another sexual orientation, right? And with Dr. M.
That's right.
Pankhurst, she's done a whole big load, of blogs on it, kind of thing, and she said that is the route they're going down.
I mean, we've got Dr. M on the podcast, and just a wee update. There's a women's event.
It's through in Alloa.
In Alloa on the 5th of March, I believe. So again, she's announced that she's going there, or somebody announced that she's going to be attending and speaking at that. It's a women-only event. So I've asked if they're going to be recording it, because it would be something I would like to see, and I like to listen to what the speakers have got to say. It's then some threads for you to go and investigate or look at. But I mean, let's bring it back to the note of my child again, because we've went a wee bit off topic here.
That's because I can totally like a quote.
But that's good, because I like just this kind of I want to go. I mean, the thing is, it's you've got all these things, they all intertwine with one another. You've got we're having to know that we're doing this for a safeguarding measure. We've got kids, grandkids, in Eileen's case, that still this will affect. So we're doing this as a safeguard measure, because it seems to be everybody else has forgot about it. And we had Lucy for Parents Across Scotland said something interesting on Twitter the other day, actually, about parents are concerned about asking questions, because they don't want to be classed as, they're a transphobe, they're a bigot,
or a
homophobe,
or a this,
or whatever, rather than, as I said, go back to what we were talking about earlier, a genuine conversation, fact finding, try to find information out, because everything that we're getting fed is a load of rubbish when we go and check it, and no, that's not true, and that's not true, and we can like a quick search, check it yourself. But if you've not got the time to do that, if you're a busy professional, that time's really squashed because you're under pressure take him
Peter,
home
there's
for
a-
work,
there's a-
make a
there's-
dinner or whatever.
Peter, there's something really important at stake here, you know, with all of this, right? We all know that there's been horrific cases where children have fallen through the cracks, right? And have been abused or ended up murdered, right? We all know about that. And that's why safeguarding is really, really important.
Yep.
But what ScotGov is doing right now with us, their population, you know, their adult population, is they're turning around to us and saying, we think you're thick, we
Aye.
think you're pretty stupid, right? And we're not trusting you to raise your children. So what we're going to do is we're going to get lobbyist groups into the school, you know, to teach them about social justice, right? And to teach them about how to be nice and how to be kind and how to do this and how to do that. How dare they?
Aye. That's
They're
again,
actually turning around to us and saying, we don't trust you to raise your own children. And see, when it all goes wrong, who's going to have to pick up the pieces?
us, the ones
Them.
the ones that are trying to highlight the concerns before they happen,
They
then
want
got
to
to be
stop
left.
it happening.
Are then got to be left to try and deal with the concerns that they tried to highlight before it happened,
Yeah.
after the event. So I mean, it's on us. This is why we're doing this. If we can help with anything in respect to, if you're unsure of where to start, where to look, get in touch with us on Twitter. As I say, drop us an email if anybody's got the minutes to those meetings, because it'd be really good to have. At tweetstreetscotland13@gmail.com. On that note, I think that finishes us up for the night. You'd like to say good night now?
Nighty night. Night, everybody.
Right, so it's goodbye for Eileen, goodbye for myself, Cinnamon Bridges, aka Peter, at Tweet Street, home of the satirical saltire. Hope you have a good night. Cheers.